Hi, welcome to Yuma Center, where we inspire women to impact generations. My name is Mary Ellen Yep, and I will be your host tonight as the program director here at Yuma Center. We at Yuma are reaching you from the hill to the home, and tonight we have people joining us from over 24 different states and including Canada. So this has become an international event. We are so excited about our talk on how to understand your child's temperament. Our speaker tonight is Miss Barbara Falk. Ms. Falk is an educator and lecturer specializing in empowering parents to raise children of character in today's world. A nationally known speaker, Ms. Falk encourages parents to take an active leadership role in the home, teaching their children the importance of virtuous living within the natural setting of the family. As previous head of Oakcrest School in the Washington, D.C. area, Ms. Falk speaks to parents on a wide array of challenges impacting families today. Her advice and solutions are practical, humorous, and grounded in common sense. Many of her anecdotes come from her teaching experience and life growing up in a large family of extroverts. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Mary Ellen. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you tonight. Our topic is very interesting. It's very practical, and I hope you will also find it entertaining. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's begin. So let's stop and think. Why is it that life has born optimists and born pessimists? Why is it that some people see the glass half full and other people see it half empty? Why are some people totally affected by scary or violent movies and others are unfazed? Why are some crushed when they're corrected by parents and teachers and others not? Well, why is it? The answer is one word, and that's temperaments. So just to give you a little background, we'll get much more diverse as soon as I lay the groundwork. So first of all, character and temperament are very different things. Some people interchange them, they're not the same. So character and temperament are very different things. Temperament is defined in the dictionary as one's natural disposition. It's natural. Temperament is actually rooted in our biology. It's innate. Temperament is a gift, an inheritance. It is 100% received, and it comes directly from God. And I like to call our temperament a person's biological hardware. Temperament is permanent in each person, and you cannot exchange your temperament. It's unchangeable and non-transferable. Unlike temperament, character is not an inheritance. Each individual must build character for him or herself. Character is a victory, not a gift. Each one of us has the power and the obligation to develop, to build our own character. And I like to call character your biological software. Character then is a matter of engaging your free will, and it's malleable, it must be crafted, and shaping one's character actually means developing and growing in virtue. So enter parents. You're going to be my focus tonight. So you step into that room of formation and character building. You have a huge role in this. And you do this with your children very naturally 24/7. A case in point, manners. You teach manners, and that's a part of building character. So knowledge of the temperaments will help you with all your relationships, but especially with your children. And that's where we're going to be focusing tonight. So today, there are many sophisticated ways to analyze temperaments and personalities, but this talk is based on the ancient and profound work of Hippocrates, who was from 400 BC. He was a Greek physician considered the father of medicine. So all of us are able to detect differences in people, be they subtle or glaring. Noticing these differences is automatic. It takes no training. So the purpose of this talk is to help you to learn specific traits of each temperament and use this knowledge to help you to understand, not to label and to condemn. So I need you, the theme of the talk is basically be convinced that just because a person is different doesn't make him wrong. So let's stop and think again. So part 2 of the stop and think. Why is it that some are devastated when they lose or make a mistake in a game? One child in your family does homework, the other child could care less. You're standing in an airport, the marquee or whatever you call that electronic board tells you that your plane has been canceled or delayed. There are an array of different things people do. Some people get really angry. Some people get very worried. Some people shrug. And then the optimistic person will say, oh, it could be worse. And then stop and think about a New York choleric. I really can tell the temperament of a person when you drive in New York for sure, but when you're driving in different places, you can tell the temperament of the person by the way they honk. And in New York, they just lay on the horn and it's deafening. And so you could call that a very choleric horn honking. And with regard to computers, why do some people read manuals and some people would rather waste hours just hacking? That's a temperament thing. So the answer again is temperament. So why is it when faced with the same event, some people shake it off, some people suffer, and some people are energized? So you know the answer is temperaments. This is this biological thing we're going to be talking about tonight. And I have somebody in my family that some teenage boy came up to her. She's an adult woman, and this teenage boy said, I have an emergency, I have to call my parents. Can I borrow your phone? And she loaned him her cell phone and the kid took off. And when she was telling me this, I was really mad because she had been deceived and tricked. And I was like outraged by it. And she just looked at me and she goes, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. And that's a temperament thing. And it's very interesting. So temperaments are a great mystery. So even though I'm going to give you a lot of things to think about tonight, there's a mystery behind this because every human person is different. There aren't any, even identical twins aren't the same temperaments. So temperaments are a great mystery. So within every family and in your family, there exists a wide array of different temperaments. And that's because each person is unique by God's design. So each person, no matter what we say about temperaments tonight, is absolutely unique. But it helps to identify behavior patterns and where the person is coming from biologically. That's the key. So I'm going to read 2 lists that are very helpful. So the 4 temperaments that we're going to be studying and discussing tonight from Hippocrates are choleric, sanguine, melancholic, and phlegmatic. A lot of people say choleric, I say choleric, so I'm not really sure which is correct. So the choleric person biologically tends to look and act resolute, firm, and energetic. They react quickly to stimuli and impressions tend to be lasting. They're full of energy and vigor. They like activity, but they tend sometimes to bite off more than they can chew. Tenacious and goal-oriented, they have sharp insight. They're quick-tempered, and they tend to harshness or stubbornness. They like to take the lead, and they do well in leadership positions. That's choleric. Sanguine. A sanguine person tends to look cheerful, friendly, and carefree. They react quickly to stimuli, but the impression doesn't last. They're optimistic, they see the bright side, they bounce back from setbacks quite easily. They're friendly and sociable, and they like to have a good time. And the last point is they're impulsive. That was sanguine. Now the melancholic, you all know that word, melancholic. They tend to be serious, deliberate, and somber at times. They're slow to react to stimuli, but reactions and impressions are lasting. They tend to think analytically, and they like to spend time thinking. They're sensitive and can be easily hurt. And unfortunately, they're prone to depression. They're affectionate, they're kind-hearted, they're patient, they're understanding of and compassionate towards others, and they tend to be perfectionists. That was melancholic. The fourth one, the fourth and last, this is phlegmatic. They tend to move slowly. They can seem disinterested, lazy, or sluggish. Now, this is biological tendencies. Not deeply stirred by any emotion, nor quick to react to a stimulus. Their impressions fade quickly. They're industrious, methodical, slow but thorough. They're objective, they're quiet, and they're thoughtful. They like routine. They don't understand the strong emotions of others. They're steady and reliable. So that's the 4 temperaments. And then I'm just going to give you another person's perspective. He wrote a book called Powerful Personalities. It's an old book now, but I love it. It's written by Tim Kimmel. And he renames the choleric. So he renames choleric and he calls them fearless. So he says that the motto of the fearless choleric person is, let's do it now. They love to lead, they make plans for others, they thrive on competition and pressure, and they like a challenge and quick results. They're called fearless, but they're really the choleric. And then the sanguine he renames spontaneous. He calls them spontaneous. So what's their motto? The sanguine's motto is, trust me, we'll make it. A sanguine person is a party looking for a place to happen. They just want to have fun. They wake up smiling. They're civilization's born optimists. And they motivate and mobilize others with ease. Those are the sanguine, but he calls them spontaneous. And then the third one, the melancholic person, he calls them loyal. Their motto is, let's not change anything, okay? They're great listeners, which fosters their need for close relationships. They love to please their peers. They say yes to everything that's not really important. They wouldn't change their convictions. So if somebody says, you want to go bowling? Sure. Do you want to do my homework? Sure. But if they told them something serious, they wouldn't go along. The melancholics are stubborn about important things and convictions. And the last thing is they avoid conflict and confrontation. Okay, so what does he call the phlegmatic person? He calls them deliberate. Their motto is, wait while I read the directions. So they guard their hearts, they conceal their emotions, they go by the book, they read manuals and directions. Let's do it right, one step at a time, very methodical. They stuff their anger and they would rather suffer in silence than fight. So that's fearless, spontaneous, loyal, and deliberate. Just renaming the 4 temperaments according to Hippocrates. Okay. All right. Now to apply this information. So that's the fun part. I just am going to show you a couple of people in history to tell you my opinion about their temperaments. So history, literature, and movies, they're an incredible expose on the different temperaments. You wouldn't have novels, you wouldn't have movies, you wouldn't have plots without temperaments. So in history, a choleric person that's really a bad example of a choleric is Adolf Hitler. You all can tell whenever he's on camera, he's just screaming and, popping veins. So he's a bad choleric. And then sanguine, I would say that President Ronald Reagan was a very sanguine person. He was very jocular. He got a lot of people to work with him. He could work across the aisle. So Ronald Reagan's my pick for sanguine. And then the melancholic would be Abraham Lincoln. So I remember seeing a documentary about him, and then one of the things they said is his melancholy dripped from him as he walked. He was very clever and humorous, but he was a melancholic person. And you can tell when you look at his portraits, look at his eyes. He has very sad eyes, and that's sometimes a giveaway. So that's history. Then literature. Literature is loaded, okay? So Pride and Prejudice. The 5 daughters, Lizzie Bennet, she's a choleric. Jane, she's melancholic. The silly little daughters that were, silly, and then the girl that played the piano. And then Darcy, melancholic. Little Women, that Jo is choleric. Amy is very sanguine. Beth, melancholic. Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester, in my opinion, were melancholic and choleric. They were strong, but they were melancholic people. And then Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara. My goodness gracious, she's definitely a choleric person, and Rhett Butler the same. And then Melanie and Ashley were melancholic. And then let's look at Anne of Green Gables. If you know, she was very much, I would say, melancholic, choleric, because she was a drama queen. She was stubborn, and she held a grudge against Gilbert for a long time. So she's interesting. And then with movies, casting is an art, and casting really is everything. And casting is rooted in temperaments. It can make or break a film. So imagine if Marilyn Monroe had been chosen as Scarlett. No way. And then with the choleric actresses right now, in the sense of the roles that they take, I would say Meryl Streep and Glenn Close, because they have strong temperaments. Maybe they're just acting, but they seem like they are. Sanguine, I don't know if you know these people, but Billy Crystal, Jim Carrey, Tina Fey, they're sanguine, happy-go-lucky, funny. And then melancholic, Woody Allen. This is a quote from Woody Allen. All my movies are tragedies because to live is to suffer. That's really eye-opening. And then the phlegmatic, if you saw the movies of Pride and Prejudice, the father in Pride and Prejudice, I would say, was a classic phlegmatic. He was non-confrontational. He was hiding in his study all the time. Okay, so mixed temperaments. Most people are mixed and they have more than one temperament. Usually we have one dominant temperament and one secondary. Few of us are purebreds, but let me just touch upon a couple people in history that have obviously double, like more than one temperament. So Napoleon and let's say Teresa of Avila, I think that they were both choleric, like strong, and also they were also melancholic, sensitive. And then Queen Victoria, I would say she's phlegmatic, also melancholic. I mean, when her husband died young, Albert, every single night until her death, and she reigned for 60 years, she laid out his clothes. So she was very methodical about even her grieving. So there's a dynamic here. Temperaments are all about perceptions and reactions. The same circumstance, the same stimulus produces a very different perception and reaction in different people. So let me give you an example. This happened to my family. Years and years ago, we were actually all home, and a burglar came in and robbed the house. And the next morning, my little sister, she was probably about 7, she got up to get cereal. It was Saturday morning. She wanted to go to, get some cereal, and she noticed that the back door, the glass was shattered all over the floor. So like a good, well-trained child, she swept up the glass and she poured her cereal and went into the TV room to watch cartoons. And then my older sister came down the stairs. She was probably 16. And she took a look at what was going on downstairs. She saw, the situation in the house, and she started screaming, bloody murder, we've been robbed. So later on, my mother said to the 7-year-old, what were you thinking when you were sweeping up the glass? And she goes, well, I don't know. So the deal is people have very different reactions to the same exact thing. And then this is a true story of a friend of mine. 3 of her little kids were walking down a road in the last couple of years. And all of a sudden they came upon, it was rural, and they came upon a dead squirrel. So the reactions of these 3 young siblings, the boy just kind of went, oh, that is so cool. And one of the girls burst into tears. And then the sanguine girl said, oh no, look over there, I see live squirrels. So there are some living squirrels. So that's a real testimony of temperaments, because he says cool, she starts crying, and she's like trying to make everybody happy again. So now let's move on to how can you handle your children differently? Since they have different temperaments, you need to kind of tweak how you react to them according to their biological temperament. So that takes a lot of common sense and knowledge of temperaments to craft their character and to work on specific things. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is go into these 4 categories and see how the parents can react to children that are different biological temperaments. So when you build character, it takes virtue, effort, discipline, and free will. Okay, so the choleric child. When you're, as a parent, let's put on your parenting hat now, a choleric child, you should try to be calm and unemotional when a choleric child is severe, sharp-edged, impetuous, or obstinate. The choleric child can be relied upon to do what he is told. Avoid saying to a choleric child, relax, relax, because you know what? They can't. They can't relax. They can provoke or bring out the worst in you. So that's the way we're supposed to behave as parents. But I remember this little girl who, you know, she was very choleric, you could tell. And she, when she was very young, like 18 months old, her very first sentence was, I do it self, because somebody in the family was doing something for her and she wanted to do it by herself. And then, I don't know how many of you remember, but years ago, they landed a plane on the Hudson River because I think geese flew into the airplane. And anyway, the pilot, there was a movie, you saw it, I'm sure, Tom Hanks, but they, nobody died, and they landed on the Hudson River, and they were all waiting on the wing. I remember seeing it on TV and watching all these people. It was freezing cold, and they were all on the wing waiting, and all these tugboats and first responding boats were coming, and everybody was patiently waiting on the wing of the plane, freezing to death, but they were waiting. And all of a sudden, one guy jumped in the water and swam to New Jersey, okay? And the only reason is he just had to do something. He couldn't wait. He just had to do something. So that's, in my opinion, very choleric. Then I also know a little girl that she was mad at her daddy one day, and she said, when I grow up, you cannot ever visit me in college. So, I mean, that's very choleric. Okay, so to craft the character of a choleric child, you need to help them work on being patient and considerate. Okay, sanguine. Try not to become irritated when the sanguine child is very talkative, superficial, or frivolous. It's important to remember that even when this child is most sincere, you may not be able to rely on them to come through, even after they make an apparently very sincere promise, as you can a choleric child. You tell a choleric child to go make his bed, he's going to go make his bed. But a sanguine child's on her way to make her bed, and then she sees the kitty, and she runs after the kitty, and that's it for the bed. So it's very different in their biological reactions. So sanguine children work better with a partner or in a team. They really can't do things alone. They'd like to be like a party, like doing something together. So let's see, you have to appeal to their heart to say to them, oh my gosh, I need your help. Can you help me make my bed? And they'll be very happy to do that. But they do get caught up in circumstances, and they're very good at avoiding work. That's something they do well. They avoid work well. And they get other people to do their work, and they thrive on affirmation. All of us need affirmation and respond well to affirmation, but a sanguine person needs much more. They need more demonstrative affirmation than your basic temperament. Okay, so just a couple of anecdotes about sanguine people, children, or just sanguine people. Like this little girl twirled into a room full of adults. Her parents had some sort of a cocktail party or wine and cheese, and this little girl twirls in to the room full of adults, and she says, here comes me. That's very sanguine. And then with hands on their hips to their parents, I remember this other little girl came up to her parents. They were sitting down at the dining room table, and she said, hey guys, I need attention. And that's another drama queen sanguine move. And I have somebody in my family who, she's like 4 years old now, but even when she was younger, she's always talking and saying all these wonderful things, and she's really smart, but whenever she gets nailed and somebody's like catches an error, she'll get out of it somehow. So this is one of my favorites. she was talking to somebody in the family, an adult, and she said, well, there was a party in Antarctica for penguins and peacocks. And the adult said, oh, do peacocks live in Antarctica? And she said, yes, they do, but they're very rare. So she does that kind of stuff all the time. And my last sanguine one is this lady who loved to tell stories, and she'd go to parties all the time. She was like the belle of the ball. And one day she was at a party and she was telling everybody about her summer that she and her husband went on a road trip. She talked about all the different people they met when they were driving to gas stations and cross country and the whole thing. And people were laughing, they were riveted. And when everything calmed down, her husband said, we took a plane. So she made the whole thing up. And she just kind of looked at him like, okay, no big deal. So for a sanguine person, a parent should try to craft their character by working on helping them to follow through, to follow through. That's the big thing. Okay, melancholic children. A melancholic child takes everything to heart, so you need to be more delicate. Kind treatment helps melancholic children to be more trusting and affectionate. Try not to get irritated if the melancholic child is slow, hesitating, undecided. Their serenity is ruptured by sensitivity. They can try your patience. So you have to be extra loving, kind, and never sarcastic. Sarcasm doesn't work with anyone, especially children, but it can be fatal for melancholic. So there's this spiritual author who is dead now, but his name was Ronald Knox. And there's this anecdote about him that shows you that he's very melancholic. He was lying in bed. He was 3 years old. He was on his back, and his eyes were open, and he was looking at the ceiling. And most 3-year-olds don't do that. They're either sleeping or goofing around on their bed. But he was lying there looking up at the ceiling, and his mother went past his room, and she came in and she said, Ronald, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm thinking. And she said, you're thinking? What are you thinking about? And he's 3 years old, and he goes, I'm thinking about the past. So that's pretty melancholic. And then I know a little boy that came home from school. It was like kindergarten. And his mother said, well, how was school? And he said, Mother, I have to quit school. She said, what? Your first day of kindergarten? And he said, yes, there's just too much to learn. So that's pretty melancholic. And then the last one is another little boy who is very, very sensitive. He's probably 4 now. And when they were going to visit relatives at a summer cottage, he kept the whole trip, he kept saying to his mother, now tell me again, when we get there, are people going to hug and kiss me? Like people I don't even know. Are they going to be hugging and kissing me? And his mother had to keep telling him, and he kept asking because, he had to prepare himself because he didn't really understand what was going on. Okay, so what parents can do to help craft the character of a melancholic child is to work on overcoming their sensitive reactions. That they have to, walk through that door with moral courage, and they can't just be sensitive and retreat. They need to be sensitive, and they need to exercise the virtue of fortitude. Okay, the last one, phlegmatic. The phlegmatic child. They can seem indifferent or lazy. Sometimes they're laid back. Sometimes laid back people make you more nervous. If somebody's like super calm, you think, wait a minute, So we have to avoid saying to a phlegmatic child, did you hear what I said? Because they did hear you, but they're not going to react like your choleric kid is. She'll sass you, but the phlegmatic, so don't say, did you hear what I said? Because it never works. Or another thing is to say, I've told you a million times. It's not effective. It's not really charitable either, but it's not effective. So help them overcome their natural tendency to laziness, they like to take the path of least resistance. And sometimes emotion as well as normal confrontation is necessary in someone's life. So it's a good thing that they learn to react emotionally when necessary. So a couple of anecdotes about this. Another, scenario on a lake, there were a bunch of cousins jumping around on a pontoon boat, and it was beached. It was like docked on the sand, and they were all jumping around. The parents were watching, but you could tell that the boat was going to go out to sea in this lake, but it was very shallow and not a big deal. And all of a sudden, this barge broke away from the shore, and it was super shallow. And the oldest kid on the boat started screaming and crying. He was like 11. And the 4-year-old, his sibling, jumped off the boat, which was kind of hard, and he landed in the sand, got the rope, and towed everybody back to shore. That's a very phlegmatic kid. He never got upset. He just did what needed to be done, and he did it well. And then there's this anecdote about Eli Manning, the quarterback, that year, like it was Super Bowl 2012, but it was like this one of the, like 30 seconds and they were down. And the announcer said, the coolest head in this stadium is Eli Manning. So I think that's interesting because that's a biological tendency, whereas he's phlegmatic and doesn't get excited. And then you have somebody like Tom Brady, who seems like a pretty melancholic, or like at least reacts sadly when things don't go well. So to craft the character of a phlegmatic child, you have to teach them to work on expressing their feelings and being proactive. Okay, so that's the analysis of the common sense on how do you handle these different children. So different temperaments mean that we have very different areas of struggle. It's a struggle for a high-strung person to be calm. It's a struggle for a worrier to be carefree. It's a struggle for a lazy person to have initiative. It's a struggle for a capable, talented person to be patient. It's a struggle for a creative person to remember mundane details. It's a struggle for a moody person to be cheerful. It's a struggle for a sensitive person to get over something quickly. And it doesn't ever help to say, get over it. That's not helpful. It really doesn't help at all. It's a struggle for a driven, motivated person to relax. So effort is everything. Struggle has tons of merit. And regardless of temperament, all are obligated to struggle to acquire virtue. So remember, we are responsible for our own behavior and our reactions. We're not responsible for the behavior and reactions of other people. So just to wind down here, temperament is an inheritance, like inheriting blue eyes, brown hair, or long legs. So we have to try not to compare, especially among your children. It never helps to compare. But I mean, it's tempting, but it's never, be like your sister. That's not helpful. So temperaments produce our first reactions. They display our immediate inclinations. Temperaments are the pre-virtue stage of our reactions and behaviors, our biological hardware, our natural disposition. So tomorrow we're going to be posting a handout that I have. And one of the things is like a personality, very simple personality, let's just call it a test. And I just wanted to tell you, when they ask you, are you patient? Maybe you learned to be patient over 40 years of struggle, but what is your natural disposition? That's how you should answer that. So you can find out what your biological temper is. It's temperament. It's what is your natural inclination, not your virtuous character formation answer. Okay, so what's the goal? The knowledge of temperaments reduces the mystery and the fear of the unknown. Often, we suffer acute frustration because we don't know why a person, our child, just reacted or behaved that way. And the reason why it's so painful is because we would never do that. So temperament helps you to understand where this person's coming from. So remember, this is kind of hard to hear, but I'll tell you anyway. Try to remember that you'll tend to be the hardest on your children that are most like you in temperament. That just happens to be a tendency, that we're just harder. And maybe it's because we want to spare them the pain we've gone through. So we want to, we're just tougher on them so they don't suffer the way we did. And, it's a life skill to be willing to accept the temperaments of all the people in your life, especially your children and especially yourself, and to be willing to raise children of character. So remind yourself and your children often, our temperaments make us different, not wrong. Each temperament must strive to acquire virtue. Each temperament must craft one's own character. Each temperament must work through its own specific challenges, facing their weaknesses head on. And character is what we freely do with our God-given temperament. So these are things that parents need to do, and obviously you all do it very naturally. We teach manners, what do you say, please and thank you. That's all part of crafting your temperament. So just on a whimsical note, I thought I would just wind down with some whimsical things. If you look at Charlie Brown Peanuts characters, each character illustrates one of the temperaments. So for instance, choleric, you would say that Lucy seems choleric. She's irascible and somewhat difficult to handle. Sanguine, Peppermint Patty. She's always up, and she calls Charlie Brown Chuck. I mean, she's pretty funny. And then Snoopy's also sanguine. He's the Red Baron. He has this major imagination that's not really grounded in reality. That's Snoopy. And then melancholic would be Charlie Brown himself. Nobody loves me, nobody likes me. And then there's Linus, who is pretty melancholic with that blanket and his thumb. And then the phlegmatic one would be Schroeder, who's banging on the piano and totally focused and not distracted and single-minded about playing the piano. And then if you look at Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Oz, the lion, I would say is melancholic. He's crying all the time, gets nervous. And the Scarecrow is very sanguine. He's very up and cheers people up. And the Tin Man, I would say, is phlegmatic. And then the Witch is obviously very choleric. Okay, so we're almost done. I just wanted to share some things with you. So I'm just going to end with this, but then we're also going to do a little bit of back and forth. If you can start the day without caffeine, if you can always be cheerful, ignoring aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be grateful for it, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can relax without liquor, if you can sleep peacefully every night, then you are probably the family dog. I love telling this at the end of the temperament thing because it's just so funny. But so right now, before we begin the Q&A, I thought I would, normally when I give this in a live audience, we do it back and forth and people raise their hand and tell me what they think the answer is. But we're not gonna be able to do that now. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna read real quotes from children which demonstrate their dominant temperament. And I'll read the quote and then I'll pause so that you can think and try to guess on your own, and then I'll give you my opinion. Not that it would be the right answer, but I'll give you my opinion. So you're trying to figure out with this one quote, these are all real quotes, what is the dominant temperament of a kid that would say this? Don't scream at me because I am small and not perfect. So I think that's a melancholic thing to say. Listen to me when I'm talking to you. That's a very choleric thing to say. Write notes to me on my lunchbox napkin. In my opinion, that's sanguine. Snuggle me up in your arms. I think this can be two things. I think this can be sanguine, and I also think it can be a person who's melancholic. Next one. Tell me what I did right. So I would guess that that's choleric. And then please don't kiss me in front of school. I would say that's phlegmatic. They want to avoid emotion and being, like shown that they're emotional. And then the last one from this page is, let's spend more precious family time together. I think that's melancholic. Okay, just three more. When someone loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know that your name is safe in their mouth. Now that's melancholic if I ever saw it. Okay, and then my grandson was visiting me one day when he asked, Grandma, do you know how you and God are alike? I mentally polished my halo while I asked, no, how are God and I alike? And the little boy said, you're both old. So that's phlegmatic because he doesn't realize that he might be hurting his grandmother's feelings. And then the last one is, a grandmother was telling her little granddaughter what her own childhood was like. We used to skate outside on the pond. I had a swing made from a tire. It hung from a tree in our front yard. We rode our pony. We picked wild raspberries in the woods. And the little girl was wide-eyed, taking all this in. And at last she said, oh, I sure wish I'd gotten to know you a lot sooner. So I think that's very sanguine. Okay, so finally, we have something interesting for you that's really funny. 2 New Yorker cartoons that Mary Ellen's going to put up on the split screen, and I just thought it would be the perfect way to end this talk, to have the split screen with these 2 cartoons. But maybe we're having, oh, here it goes. Okay. Okay, so this is a Manhattan couple in New York, and their daughter on the left is young, and the parent, the caption, in case you can't read it, is, Felicia, both your father and I feel you're far too young to be mysterious. So that's kind of a dramatic, melancholic drama queen. And then the last one is, let's see if we can get it up. Don't worry if we can't, but it's really funny. I can say the caption without seeing the picture. Oh, there it goes. This is another New Yorker cartoon, and it's a little boy with his friend in his baby brother's nursery, and he goes, oh, he's cute, all right, but he's got a temperament of a car alarm. So I thought that was something you'd really be able to understand at this point in life. So now we're going to be doing Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Barb, for your talk. It was so insightful and so practical at the same time. Thank you, thank you. So now we're going to go ahead and start our Q&A. So just as a reminder, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little icon for Q&A. And so you're welcome to type in your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We do have a couple to start you off, Barb. So the first one is, how can parents display more emotional agility with their children with different temperaments? For example, Frank, a 4-year-old, is shy and slow to warm up. Frank's father sometimes feels his patience dwindling and wishes that Frank would just jump right in and be friendly to those around him.
Okay, well, this takes, I would say the first thing is dad's reaction is natural, because obviously dad doesn't have that temperament. So he's naturally reacting to a child who's different from himself. And then I think he needs a lot of patience. He has to work at the patience and developing a virtue. But then he needs to coach Frank. And many times a child like that can be prepared, just like that little boy I said that he was going to get out of the car and all these people were going to hug and kiss him, and he didn't know who they were. So I think Frank's dad needs to coach Frank and prepare him so he knows what to expect when he's around other children. And then just to affirm and encourage and say things like, you can do it, buddy. You're going to really have fun. Go ahead, but lovingly. But it's hard, and I can see where the dad would have, a challenge there.
Wonderful. Great answer. Okay, and the next question from our audience is, my husband and I are both choleric, and 3 of our kids are choleric too. We are constantly involved in power struggles. Knowing the choleric temperament, what's the best way to address this? Because they always dig their feet in.
Okay, so how many children again?
3.
Okay, and they're all choleric.
All choleric.
Now this is a cocktail for explosion. That happens, and not, mostly families have an array of temperaments. Even if both parents are choleric, they could have other people in the family that are not choleric. But I would say just to exercise how you can seek what unites, not what divides. And being harsh never helps. You want to be very effective, and that means being very calm and maybe whispering, lowering your voice, like becoming sometimes mute. And then the kids can learn, that you have to diffuse the bomb, because that really is a challenge. And, get used to it. You're going to be in a noisy house for the rest of your life. And you can enjoy them. But maybe another good thing would be to one-on-one take them someplace where the arena of family life is not there, that you just got them alone, like at McDonald's, Starbucks, whatever you want, but you talk to each one alone and you ask them for help in diffusing this very lively family dynamic. So I think that kids are very, they respond well when they're taken alone and they're asked by their parents, we need your help.
Wonderful. Great. All right, we have about 10 more questions that we're going to try and get to.
So I'll make
Yeah.
answers short.
So how early in age can you notice a child's temperament?
Well, first of all, sometimes when they're babies, but it doesn't have to stick. So if you have a baby that's really high maintenance and cries all the time, that's kind of an indication of a temperament. And if you have a really placid baby that's really like chill, maybe that baby's going to be phlegmatic. It all depends, because of course the crafting the character is a big thing. So I would say you can tell, because even a person's gait, even the way they walk, can be an indication of what their temperament is. So I would say you can pretty much tell, but not to label. But you know, they'll give you signs. I mean, if you think back on your own kids, you can tell.
Great. The next question, are there temperament tests or tools we can use to determine our children's temperaments?
Yes. Well, when you get that little, it's a very simple thing that I'm going to be putting in this handout that I have. It's like 5 pages. The test, I would make multiple copies where you're going to have it electronically, but I always tell parents to make enough copies for everybody in your house, and you can do it for your child. So if you have a 4-year-old, you're the one that's going to decide, you know, how you think the child reacts. But so that's one that you'll get that tomorrow, and then they probably have lots of things in books. So there's I kind of I typed this out. So powerful personalities. I don't know if they have an actual test, but that book by Tim Kimmel. And then there's a really funny Christian woman. Her name is Florence Littauer, and I love her. And she wrote a book called How to Get Along with Difficult People. And it's really excellent. And she's funny, and she's a speaker. And then you are probably all familiar with Lorraine and Art Bennett. They're a married couple, and they started writing books called The Temperament God Gave You, The Temperament God Gave Your Spouse. These are all different books. The Temperament God Gave Your Child. So that's Lorraine and Art Bennett. And then somebody told me about a book that I haven't read, but it's called The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine N. Aron, A-R-O-N. And just so you know, I mean, just to tell everybody this, I don't think I mentioned it, but a melancholic person, so if you have a melancholic child, it's always good to tell them, honey, you know what? God made you very sensitive, and that means you're going to suffer more. You're going to suffer more than your friends. And then they know that it's okay that they're, you know, suffering. So I think it's helpful. It's like affirming them.
Great. Next question is, how, if at all, are temperaments related to the love languages?
I think they're very related. I've never really thought about it in a coherent way, but I'm going to. That's a great nudge, because I think, you know, it's very interrelated. I won't go into it, but it's, you know, people that need physical touch and stuff like that. I mean, that could be a sanguine, that could be a melancholic, because choleric people don't tend to want a lot of back rubbing. So, you know, it just depends. So I think, yes, that's a great question. I'm going to look into that and see what I come up with.
Great. The next question, this audience member says, thank you for your great talk. How can we teach the children all this knowledge about the temperaments of their siblings and parents so that they can also understand them and us?
Okay, that's very important. So when you have a choleric child that just had a huge meltdown and everyone else in the room is like in different stages, like maybe the sanguine one's like twirling and the melancholic is crying, you can talk to them. And I really highly recommend, as an educator, to talk to children alone and just say, how'd you feel when that just happened? I'm really sorry, but you know what? You got to understand something. He is like this by his biology. And he's got to learn to control it, because, you know, in the olden days, people didn't really know much about temperaments, but they would say things to their children like, you've got to learn to control your temper. You have a very, very bad temper. Well, that's talking about a temperament. So I think it's very important to educate the children in the family as well as your relatives because, relatives and even siblings need to understand the biological tendencies, and and that's important, that they need to understand. And then, believe it or not, they can say to people, we're working on this, we're really working on this, because this is a struggle for her.
Great. The next question is, what should parents do when one child's temperament dominates daily family life?
That's tough. It's really, really and truly that can happen, right? I mean, we all know, like, I know this one mother who told me in my life, of just helping families, she would tell me that when this kid, she had a big family, and when this particular kid that dominated the whole family would walk into the kitchen, the mother's back would go up. She was just like, um, it was difficult to have the child like come into the room, because then you knew something bad was going to happen. So I would say, to really, well, there are tons of books out there. And I know Dr. Dobson is really great. He talks about the strong-willed child. So, but then to try to give that person who's doing all this, maybe they thrive on negative attention, to try to, change horses in midstream and give them a ton of affection and a ton of attention, not in the arena of family life. Because then they're not going to need to do that as much. So I just think the parents have to just be very focused on that child, because, they need more attention, so that they don't cause so much trouble. And then, of course, everybody knows about timeout and all that, but I mean, depends, you just want to be effective.
Mm-hmm. Great. Um, another audience member says, why do grandchildren behave better when their parents aren't around?
I think that's pretty typical. I think it's just a natural reaction, because they're not with their parents all the time. So, sorry, they're not with their grandparents all the time. So they know their parents have unconditional love for them, and maybe they want to, I don't know, they want their grandparents to want them to come over, because the parents are stuck living with the children, right? So the children know that, no matter how badly I treat my parents, they love me madly and they're going to keep me around. But if I misbehave with grandma, maybe I can't come back for a couple months. So I think that's the reason. I mean, it's just, I don't know why it is. It's kind of like this thing we call in our family, we call company-itis. Why do children melt down when company's in the house? It's weird. We don't really know why, but it's kind of a funny dynamic.
Great. All right, 2 more questions that we're going to take. How can you help your melancholic husband to be more positive and optimistic, especially as he is being such a, especially because he is such an important role model for the kids? How do you help him without challenging his authority in front of the kids?
So his melancholy kind of leaks out and he passes on his negative perspective.
I mean, she said that he might, how can you help him be more positive?
Right.
So she doesn't
I
say
would
that.
say never, I mean, again, if one thing is clear, it's never effective to go after an objective problem in the arena of family life. So I would save that for a date night with my husband, to talk to him about how the children need him to be positive. And, like if he ever feels like he can't say something, how many times do you ever hear your parents say, if you can't say something nice, say nothing at all. The mother can say, honey, you know what, I really need you to not be negative around the children, because it really upsets them. But that again, lovingly, affirmingly, encouragingly, but alone with your husband, when it's as needed, because he needs, as you say, he needs his authority to be respected.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, we actually have time for 2 more questions, if that's okay with you, Barb. Okay, so 2 more questions. This audience member says, I have a 13-year-old son who likes to hide himself every time we have a party or entertain. He is the oldest of 3, and as a mom, I came from a big family and it's common for a big family to get together. She's asking, how do we handle him? She says that she gets frustrated sometimes.
Again, I would talk to this boy and I would just say to him, honey, we really need you. You're so much fun. Maybe he's not a lot of fun, but it's okay to fib a little bit. because, I don't know how much of this happened when he was younger, pre-adolescent, because now he's 13. So who knows if he suffered an eclipse when he became a teenager? I don't know. But if it's his biological temperament that he avoids parties, then the mother or the father, depending on who can be more effective with him, take him out, do something, go on a walk, but just don't handle it in the moment when you say, well, honey, where were you? The people are downstairs. I want to say hello to you. Handle it ahead of time, because it always helps to prepare children ahead of time. And then you can just say, honey, you know what? I know you don't like this, but that's okay, because Jesus didn't want to die on the cross. I mean, like, in other words, we teach them to suffer, and we teach them to step up to the plate, and we teach them to do something morally courageous. And you say, you know what? I'm sorry that you don't like company, but we would love to introduce you. You're our oldest son. We think you're wonderful. And then you just kind of coax them into it and see how it goes. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be an instant cure, but I don't really know how his temperament was before he turned 13 and started hiding. But
Great. All right, and our last question, how do you help a sanguine child with settling down for work, particularly in school with homework situations?
so physically in school, because if
Um,
you do a homework thing, I think this whole thing goes back to, they're not going to be able to work alone. So if mom sits down, like, let's say you're a person that does you do spiritual reading, or you do whatever you do, to sit down next to the child that has to do homework, and you go, you do your homework, and mommy's going to crochet, or mommy's going to, maybe you're going to work on your phone. I don't know. But the deal is, they really can't stay on task without somebody to help them. So it's helpful if you sit down with them and say, okay, for the next half an hour, let's get some lemonade. We're going to sit down and you're going to do your homework, blah, blah, blah. And then they're accompanied. They're not alone, because they really do. They need people. They really need people, and they need people biologically. Whereas a kid who's really a grind and works really hard in school, they don't want people around. They want to just do it and, whatever. So.
Great. Well, wonderful. Barb, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You were so wonderful to have.
Related. Thank you so much, everyone.
And just as a reminder, we are going to compile the documents that the little handouts that Barb will have, and we'll send them in a follow-up email tomorrow for everyone to partake in, to look at. Thank you again for joining us.